Okay, we are doing Chapter 4 terms. Now, these are more advanced classical conditioning ideas, and they take our basic structure of the US, UR, CS, CR, which you should be pretty good at doing now. And we're going to add on to it, and by using these, we can explain more behavior with classical conditioning, which is sort of the point. So, we're going to start off with 4 ideas, then we have a worksheet that goes with that. Then we'll add a couple of more in another worksheet. The worksheets we'll mostly do in class, but this should give you everything you need to know. Of course, it's also in Chapter 4 in your book. All right, so the first one we're going to do is called higher order conditioning. Now, what you have here is your basic classical conditioning set up, and then you add on to it. You know how the CS is like a predictor for the US? We now are going to add on a second CS, which becomes a predictor for the first CS. One example might be, let's say you are, dating somebody, and the sight of that person elicits a positive response from you. Now, probably this is because the sight of that person has been paired with something, let's say, kissing or holding hands, and that physical contact elicits an automatic physiological response from you, an emotional response. The fact that this person has been associated with that, now you just see that person, or you see a picture of them, or you hear their name, you may have a positive conditioned response. Now let's say after you've learned that, this person starts wearing some kind of cologne. And even when you see them, and they're wearing the cologne, and you're with them or you see them, but they're not physically touching you or anything, this cologne can then come to remind you of the person. So now let's say you're walking through the department store, you smell the, Polo cologne or whatever awful thing they're wearing, and now that stimulus elicits sort of a memory or a thought of the person who themselves is a conditioned stimulus. This is also called second order conditioning. If we added on a third CS, that would be third order conditioning, fourth, etc. Now, as you add on sort of the links of the chain to these predictors, you're going to have weaker responses to where the point, you probably can't add anymore. It's not going to elicit a particular response. So that's higher order. Now the next one is very similar, but what we're going to do is take this piece here, the CS pairing between CS2 and CS1, and we're going to move it for our next thing, and this is going to come earlier. Also, let me point out, the CS2 in this example has never been paired with the US. That's pretty interesting. It's as if the first conditioned stimulus acts as a US itself. Okay, and let me give you one more example before we move on. Advertising is a really common example. So if you think about any kind of like athlete or entertainer that is being paired with a product, they're a spokesperson. Well, let's think about what those components are. We'll use Michael Jordan because that's in my day, I suppose. So let's say, Michael Jordan, the first time you see this guy or hear this name, he doesn't mean anything in particular to people. But even if you were never a basketball fan or watched sports or anything, if you happened to see this guy on TV playing basketball and you saw his amazing performance, like he could just leap through the air and basically it was like this guy's flying and then slam dunk, you would be impressed the first time you saw it. So this kind of amazing athletic performance is the US. Your unconditioned response is just like, wow, that guy can fly. It's amazing, okay? Now, you see that a few times, and you start to associate the name, the person, if you saw a picture and you recognized him, and that would elicit some kind of probably positive emotional response from you. Now, you take that person you've learned something about, and you stick a product with them. And, during the commercial or in the magazine ad, you're not seeing them make that amazing athletic performance. You're just seeing the person with the product. Underpants, I guess. He sells underpants, right? And the idea is you're going to make an association, and eventually the product will come to elicit the same positive response that the person does. So that's how advertising works. Your book has a great explanation of how sometimes even when, celebrities break the law or behave badly, how sometimes they have a product that they would like you to have this sort of dangerous, association with, like, ooh, it's risky, it's walking on the dark side. And so they actually don't mind pairing their product with somebody who maybe does risky things or breaks the law because that's appealing in some way. All right, so that's higher order. Now moving on to the next thing, like I said, we're going to take this piece of it and it's just going to shift to where it happens before. And when that happens, this is called sensory preconditioning. All right, let me get that where you can see it. In sensory preconditioning, a great example of this is like guilt by association, where let's say there's two people that you always see hanging out together. And you don't necessarily know them or you don't have any particular feelings about them. You just see these people together. Okay. Now let's say one of them goes out and does something really stupid. I don't know, just, does something terrible. They get written up in the newspaper. Maybe they get arrested. And you have, to whatever they did, you have an automatic negative reaction. Like, what an idiot. I can't believe the person did that. Okay. Now, it makes sense then that that person who did the stupid thing, either seeing them, hearing their name, seeing a photo maybe, would elicit a mild kind of negative response because you associate them with this stupid thing they did, right? But then sometimes what happens is people that we've already connected to them will also elicit that negative response. So you see this guy's friend walking down the street and goes, oh, jeez, what a jerk. Like, the guy's probably thinking, what did I do? I didn't do anything, wrong. But it's just that guilt by association. I have previously connected these people. One of them now goes out and does something that I have this learned response to now, and it sort of translates over to the other person that I've already connected. Okay. So you can see this piece just comes first. That's the only difference between the higher order conditioning and sensory preconditioning. Okay, we got those two down.